So I just want to get straight to it because we only have an hour, and I want to make sure that this session is driven by your questions. So there's a lot of times people come to learn things, but they walk away without getting their questions answered, unfortunately. And so I do want to make sure that you do have a little bit of time. So I'm just going to go over some general statements and welcome you all here. Again, I'm Stacy Savage. I'm the founder and CEO of Zero Waste Strategies. Now, we're an environmental consulting firm, and we specialize in waste reduction. That's through reuse, recycling, food waste composting, donations. Also, we provide empowering employee training to help companies drive a competitive green marketing edge. And we've worked with the likes of Dell, AT&T, Apple, Nestle Purina, university campuses like Boston University and University of Texas at Dallas, and municipalities like City of Austin, to name a few of our clients. So my goal for this session here is to provide education, loads of value to those that are live on this Q&A watching, or if you're watching the recording from home or your office later on, who are interested in green operations for their businesses through waste reduction. Definitely want to welcome you to the session, and you can always email me if you're watching the recording a little later, either through LinkedIn or through my email address. So if you have any questions that you weren't able to pose with us here on the live Q&A, I always take questions via email or just direct message on LinkedIn is fine. I definitely want to connect with you all here on LinkedIn because you obviously have an interest in these topics. So if you want to connect with someone who has been a total recycling nerd for the past 20 years, go ahead and send me an invite request. I'm going to drop my personal link to my personal page on LinkedIn in the chat so that you guys can connect with me either now or once we're wrapping up a little bit later in this session. And once you've connected with me on my personal page, then you can head over to my business page called Zero Waste Strategies and connect with our business page there. And if you want to follow, our updates, cool tips, hacks for home and business, it's a great place. I post a bunch of stuff there, as well as our website, which is zerowaste.org. And that's the number 0, the digit, waste.org. So I want to kind of open up with a general, just make sure that we're all on the same terms here about what is zero waste. A lot of folks, I never know what level of education people have whenever they're coming into our training session. So I want to make sure that we have an even playing field here where we understand the definitions, key concepts, and that type of thing. So zero waste is a philosophy that aims to minimize waste generation by redesigning products, processes, and systems to eliminate or reduce waste. And it leads to more sustainable and efficient operations. So this is really a business efficiency concept that is global. At least here in Texas, I'm also in the Austin area. Zero waste really made landfall 2009, 2010. So we've had ordinances and recycling mandates in place for over 10 years now, and businesses have really gotten the hang of it. But many people are calling in from outside of Austin, outside the state of Texas, and they want to know kind of how does this affect me in my local area or in my business industry? Because remember, every business is different, meaning every waste stream is going to be different for different industries, right? So this is all measured by achieving a 90% or more waste aversion level from landfills and incinerators. So we don't want to burn or bury our materials anymore. Our materials are very valuable. They have usually high value on the commodities market. And there's a lot of times where you can, municipalities or businesses can sell these commodities to recyclers and they can make a profit off of them. So there's a way to not just hand over your recyclables to a hauler and pay them to cart them away off your property. There's a way to bale and bundle and find the highest bidder for those materials. So there's trash is not trash. It has inherent value because it can be recycled and renewed and reused over and over again. So thousands of businesses and city governments around the world are already implementing these types of business strategies. And they're also moving closer to their zero waste goals. Remember, that's 90% every single year. So now that we have some common foundational knowledge and language definitions shared, I would like to go ahead and open the floor for some of your questions. We can discuss things like, why is zero waste so important? Where do I start on zero waste programming for my business? How do I get my employees on board and buy in and not have so much apathy whenever it comes to environmental stewardship? And there's just so many ways that this actual discussion can go. So I want to leave it here and let you guys decide which way we're going to take it. So if you have if you've got any questions, and if you're just joining us, please put your name in the chat as well as where you're calling in from. I want to make sure that we've got everybody who registered coming on in. And I'll follow back up if people have registered and then they could not attend. I will go ahead and get your email and I'll send this recording on over to you. If you want this recording, definitely let me know and I'll email it on over to you as well. So if there are any questions from Robert, Steph, or I see Riley joined as well, or John. And then we have one more coming in, looks like Danielle. Danielle, if you can, and Riley, just put it in the chat that where your name and where you're calling in from or joining us from. We just went over some very basic zero waste terminology and the business concepts of efficiency in these business operations and protocols around zero waste. So this is a live Q&A, and I'm looking for folks to type in the chat if you have any questions that we can address for your business specifically, and or if you've got any questions around employee training and how to make it fun and accessible and enjoyable for people, since we're literally talking trash here. A lot of times this subject is not fun for many people, so we have to make it fun, right? But yeah, if there's no questions from the audience, I do have a couple of questions that I've already kind of have ready. I had a feeling this might happen, so I wanted to be prepared. So one question that I get asked a lot is, why should my business adopt zero waste practices? So embracing zero waste practices can reduce your costs, improve resource efficiency, and enhance your brand's sustainability image. And it also contributes to environmental conservation. You know, that's just the icing on the cake, right? Cherry on top. So it's really about proper management of resources and making sure that these materials are not hitting landfills and incinerators, that they're being looped back into the circular economy. The way that our society is established right now, we're in a very linear economy, and it is destructive and it's very archaic and it's A to Z. So you have the refinement process, right? You've got the you've got the extraction process, raw materials. Then you've got the refinement process. Think crude oil being turned into plastic water bottles, right? We wouldn't have plastic water bottles unless we had crude oil extraction processes. And then after the refinement process, it goes into manufacturing. So think of all the plastics molding that has to happen and all of the components that need to be put together. And then it goes to transportation, whether it's shipped overseas or to a neighboring state or across borders of connecting countries. There's a whole transportation aspect of fossil fuel emissions that also are taken into account in the production of these products that are manufactured, and eventually they just end up on our store shelves. And so it's incumbent upon the businesses that are producing these products that they've got innovation further upstream in mind, because you and I as consumers, we have zero say over whether a product is made with this type of plastic or a reduced plastic or this type of heavy metal or no heavy metals, right? So we need further accountability upstream in the innovation and design and engineering phase of the corporation that is manufacturing the product. So this is incumbent upon the businesses that want to sell their products on the store shelves of, like, I don't know, Best Buy or Walmart or wherever you get your, wherever your favorite store is. So there's a lot to be said of businesses riding the green wave and not getting caught in the whirlpool underneath, because this is coming whether you like it or not, right? It's look at your Gen X, Gen Z, and your millennials, your Gen Alpha coming up that are going to be your next kind of big market of consumers. All these generations are saying we won't accept anything less than environmental sustainability from corporations. So, your market is dictating the way that these products need to be made, and having a zero waste operation really drives home the point that you're committed as a company to not only reducing the toxins and the materials that you're using to make your new products, you're also committed to taking back your old products from your consumers, recycling them responsibly, and putting that back into a circular economy. So this is how we get away from the linear economy that's very A to Z, and it's very destructive. We make a loop and we put those products back into a regenerative cycle so that those materials can be used over and over and over again. So Riley, thank you for your question. Curious what strategies you have identified to reduce costs. Ooh, I like this one. It's one of my favorite topics, to reducing costs. So there are several. Number one is a waste audit. So if you are getting a waste audit consists of literally strapping on gloves, getting your tongs, maybe your goggles, mask, whatever you want to do, zip up a safety suit. And it literally requires you to pull materials out of your waste stream. Maybe you just have landfill trash. You don't have any recycling. You don't have any food waste composting. You're just going to pull a big sample from your landfill trash. Maybe you have just trash and recycling, no food waste composting. Maybe you've got all three. So you'll need to get, you should have three samples from your overall waste stream. And once you start doing your waste audit, this is where we get the baseline measurements of what's in your waste, the volume of waste, the percentages of, the correct materials that went into the correct bin, and the contaminants where people were mishandling their waste materials. So I would say a waste audit is really critical, is your first step to deep diving and understanding what is in your waste stream. And it also helps you understand which buildings on your campus, maybe it's a university campus, like Steph, she's with UT Austin. And, there's multiple buildings. Maybe you've got an office complex where there's multiple buildings. We just did a waste audit for one of the top 5 tech giants that are in North Austin. And we went through, I think it was about 3,300 pounds of waste over the course of 2 days with 9 subcontractors, and they were 12-hour days. It was a lot of work, but it gave us immense data, and the data analysis is really what helps you create that baseline measurement. So you know exactly where you are, and you know where you want to go, and what materials to address that are most frequently found in that waste audit. And you also know maybe which buildings are not performing as well as some of the others. Maybe you need to do a little additional training for employees there. So it really helps you understand just the baseline of where you're at and where you want to go. So I would say waste audit is the first one. And then the second one is to look at your contracts with your hauler. So with companies, there's usually a lot of turnover, and maybe even with university staff as well. There might be a lot of turnover. A majority of the time, that turnover is high in the janitorial department. So there may have been some contracts that have been signed with the janitorial department that need review on an annual basis. And this will help you identify if you have enough dumpsters on your property to handle the materials that are coming out of your property. So if you have a lot of overflow, you've got odors, you've got pests, that's mismanagement because the contract is not right sized to what your actual business needs are. So if you, and on the flip side of that, if you have, 42 dumpsters and your property is only 42,000 square feet, you probably got way too many dumpsters and you need to review your contracts to get a right-sized approach. So it's not just the number of dumpsters, it's also the capacity. Are all your dumpsters 10 cubic yards? Do you need 10 cubic yards at every single spot around your property? Maybe there are some buildings that are far more populated, have far more occupants throughout the day or the week than one of the other buildings. But if it's just kind of one size fits all, that's really not the right sized approach that we're looking for, where we can drive cost savings in doing the waste audit, finding out how much capacity you actually need versus what's on site already, looking at the contract and making sure that you can work with the hauler in order to make some adjustments in your contract to see if they'll be amenable to that. Otherwise, you're paying these companies to simply cart air off your property. They're going to get paid whether they like it or not, or whether you like it or not. Of course, they love it. And a lot of times the monetary value of their services, a lot of times it's arbitrary. They're setting it up. It's when it's first set up. So if your hauler company is not doing an annual review with you of your contracts, and they're not assessing or right sizing the specific business needs, then you're probably paying too much. You're probably being overserviced as well. So I would say that the waste audit and then checking your contract and doing some right sizing with your hauler is a second way to reduce waste. A third way is to work with your hauler to, once you've done the waste audit, and secondly, you've done your right sizing, then you need to look at how many times per week are they coming to pick up these materials and coming to pick up these dumpsters. Or maybe you've got roll-offs. Maybe you have a compactor that you have to, it either pings the hauler to come and pick it up when it's at 75, 80% full, and you don't have to do a thing, or you have to call them whenever the pressure gauge reads 75, 80%, 85%, whatever, and you have to make a call and they'll have to come and do a special pickup for you. So making sure that the frequency pickup is also right-sized along with the dumpster capacity and the number of dumpsters as well. So that's going to go hand in hand with those contract renegotiations. And if they're not willing to renegotiate with you, honestly, it might be time to put out a new RFP, request for proposal, to see if there's any other haulers in the area that might be willing to work with you in a more progressive way, so that you can understand how much you're paying for how much service, and if you actually need that much service, and if you're paying a fair amount as well. Like I said, a lot of times these are arbitrary pricing, and haulers will give you the service dumpsters, the number of dumpsters, the service capacity, and the service frequency of pickup based on what they think you might need, or based on historical data. Maybe one company that they've worked with have sold and they moved and another company came in and rented that property or whatnot, but it's still the same hauler. And they're like, oh yeah, they're going to need 12 dumpsters. Just keep them on site and just write them up a contract and have them sign it. We've serviced this same property for years and years and years. And maybe you're a company that doesn't need that much, and you're going to need to be able to have that negotiating power, that fluidity in your contracts. Very important. Great question. Thank you. Anybody else have questions? Danielle, Steph, Robert, John?
Hi, I'm just going to chat.
Yeah.
This is Steph. I work for the University of Texas at Austin, and I work for our chemical engineering department. So we do have some faculty that are working on some, obviously we make a lot of waste, but there is work being done to do that smarter or do less waste. The reason I'm here is we actually just hosted a zero waste event through resource recovery at UT, where we diverted 92% of our tailgate trash. So I'm pretty excited about that, and I'm actually writing an article that we'll include on our website and try to do some social work around that. And at UT, we obviously I feel like we have a very progressive approach to recycling. We have recycle bins. There's probably 10 in the hallway. We are doing a lot of compost recycling, but I guess I'm just wondering in general, the overall sort of sentiment towards the work of reducing our footprint. I was in Florida recently with some girlfriends that I went to high school with, and I made a recycle bin for all of our wine bottles, and everyone laughed at me. And I just was, I don't have children, so I was like, I'm doing this for your kids, and I don't understand why you don't seem to care. And I just was curious, like, the general sentiment, like, are you noticing an improvement with businesses, or like people in general, or do people not, are they concerned, I guess?
Everyone's different. Everybody's upbringing is different. Everybody's education level is different around these topics. Everybody's level of awareness. You can have a certain level of knowledge on a topic, but if you're not aware of how it affects other people in other parts of the world, or even your neighbor, in the neighboring town, then there's unfortunately, there's a severe lack of education that has plagued the U.S. And it spans every generation. So we're not just talking about people who are they're older or retired. We're not just talking about people in my generation, Gen X. We're not talking just about millennials or Gen Zers. It runs the gamut. There are people who are diehards like you and me on these topics, and we see the ramifications of the responsible management of our materials and the toxins that are in our products that we purchase. But some people need to have things happen to them in order for them to be affected and for them to relate emotionally as a life experience. So think of it, if you have if nobody in your family has ever been affected by cancer, but you still donate to cancer charities, there are people out there like that who are very aware, but there are people also on the flip side whose own mother and father have cancer, yet they still smoke cigarettes, and they're not doing much for their own health, knowing that this runs in their family and could be, they have a much higher risk. So and I don't know if that's an equitable kind of example there, but it just gives you the example of how it just runs the gamut. And So the reason I am so passionate about these issues is because I grew up in Southeast Texas, and both my parents, all my aunts and uncles and cousins worked at the oil refineries in Port Arthur. And so this is the mecca of oil and gas across the US is where I grew up. So brown hazy skies and rotten egg smells were my childhood. And so growing up thinking that this was normal and then moving away and going to UT in Arlington, and then moving to Austin eventually, uh, really broadening my horizons around how people live and what environmental impacts can cause for people. I had weird cancers popping up in the lives of influential people in my life, my godmother. So there's a lot of I think very um, there's a lot of emotional ties for me on environmental protection, and sometimes people just don't have the environment or the emotional tie-in to change their apathy, I think. So that's where education comes in. That's where really awesome documentaries come in to play to show the real life impact. That's where we get to show and connect the dots about how your waste management and what you do with the things that are in your hand and how you're at the bin system. And you might cross contaminate and you're like, oops, I did that wrong, and how that on a collective scale affects people all the way downstream, right? Because a lot of times this ends up in our landfills, which is in other people's backyards, usually fence line communities that are of low socioeconomic status and who are usually people of color, communities of color. This also just ends up dumped into our oceans, contaminating the water as well as wildlife. So if you don't see it with your own eyes, many people, it's just out of sight, out of mind. It goes away somewhere and somebody else handles it. But on a circular planet with finite resources, there's no such place as away. And so we need to make sure that the education piece is there. And even if you were mocked, it doesn't diminish your drive to create a better future for their kids and grandkids. It's an opportunity to educate, right? And to also help people understand that sometimes the environmental message just doesn't stick. You talk about one side of the green coin whenever you're talking about environmental protection, environmental impacts, but a lot of people just don't resonate. They see it as hippy dippy, woo woo, tree hugging, whenever they want to hear about the other side of the green coin, which is money. And they want to hear about the economics and the job creation possibilities and opportunities around responsible waste management and how recyclable materials, food waste can also be job creators in our local communities. Keeping these materials out of the burn and bury facilities is critical whenever we talk about economic development, job growth, and building out a whole sector of green jobs, green collar jobs with dignity. So your trash hauler and the guy who collects your cart at the side of the road is not your trash guy. That person has a very, very valuable stance in our community through their services of protecting public health and providing sanitation services. So when people see the trash guy as in my mind, they're very exalted, right? They're up here, man. They really work hard and they clean our streets and they keep our communities clean. So they deserve, well-paying green jobs with dignity. And so I would say that the education piece is really necessary, and that unfortunately the US, our states, our local municipalities, the vast majority of them have dropped the ball on education. Why? Because before the Chinese national ordinance or the national law that sends materials back that are more than 0.05% contaminated, each load, We were just dumping our materials overseas. We would send it to Mexico, China, Sri Lanka, Nigeria, go to India. So we could just kind of, not care about it. But now that this stuff is coming back to our home ports, we don't have the infrastructure. 30 years of not caring and just putting it away somewhere. Now we're having to just kind of get a taste of our own medicine, and we're not prepared. So many people have just turned a blind eye, and that has become a set of behaviors that you and me, have to turn around one person at a time through that education and helping them feel more empowered, and helping them connect the dots in their own mind, that it's not just about protecting the environment, is that we don't want to burn and bury our jobs anymore. We want to keep people employed through the circular economy and keeping materials out of our landfills so that we're not paying more taxes and more money to manage these landfills, and to open new ones whenever these other landfills are full. So I think, just to sum it all up, the education piece is critical, and you doing what you're doing already at the University of Texas here in Austin, and working with the general public at games and doing the kind of tailgate zero waste, is really going to go a long way to help change people's hearts and minds around the way that they see their own waste, and that they can see that there's an intrinsic value to those materials and they should be handled with care.
Got it.
Did that get your question, Steph?
I think so. I mean, in general, when I like to my girlfriends, like, I don't understand why you don't recycle. And they'll say, well, all recycling goes to the same place.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how, I don't really know what happens behind the scenes in Austin or McDade, the small rural town that I live in. I don't know where the stuff goes. So I really don't know how to combat that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just curious, like, what the general sentiment was, but I think it is education too, and then desire to do better for our planet.
Well, I can't speak for where you were at in Florida with your friends, but at least here in Austin, we have two MRFs, material recovery facilities. One is Balcones Resources, and one is Texas Disposal Systems, and they do all the recycling for the vast majority of Travis County, where City of Austin is the county seat, right? And so we know for a fact that those materials don't go to landfill, that we have two responsible recyclers who are under contract for recycling those materials. A lot of the problem is that people, whenever they do try to recycle, they do it incorrectly, and maybe they leave a lot of food waste in their containers. Maybe they're not rinsing things out. Maybe they're putting things in there that just don't belong, like plastic checkout bags, which we call tanglers, down at the recycling plant, because it mucks up all the machinery. If you're recycling improperly and there's a 25 to 30% contamination rate of that whole load, yeah, it's going to go to landfill because you didn't do it right. And it's not just one person, any one household, it's a collective mismanagement. So it doesn't make cost sense for the recycler to go through all those materials, that huge load, that gets dumped out on the floor for recycling processing. If they see that there's the vast majority of it, or even a small percentage, 30% is contamination, then they're going to send it to landfill. And that's what people are really talking about. That's the piece that is getting people, I guess, concerned around, well, why should I recycle anyway? We need to bust the myth that recyclables aren't being recycled and that they're going straight for landfill. But we need to counter that with, but yeah, if it does go to landfill, there's a reason why. Have you considered why it might go to landfill? And they're probably going to say, well, no. Then you can counter with the contamination rates, and you can also, counter that misconception with, sometimes the trucks look exactly the same. but they don't know that there's like a divider in the truck that keeps the trash separated from the recycling. So if one truck comes along and dumps both, then they may have an issue with that. They may be like, oh, it's all going to the same place. I'm not going to recycle anymore. But they don't understand that there's a divider in the truck there, or they may see the same truck coming and picking up, and it looks the same as the trash truck, and they're like, okay, well, I'm not going to do this anymore. So, there's a lot of times they'll go based on what they see, not what they've researched. So it's a knee-jerk reaction to go back to a more convenient lifestyle for themselves. And somebody's got to say it, but recycling is not as convenient as throwing everything into one bin. And so it takes a little bit more thought and effort and energy and concern. And I think once we help people connect the dots of why it's important and where the material goes, what happens to it downstream, how it creates jobs in a circular economy, what happens if we don't, really having those kind of bulleted talking points to combat those myths that people may have around, oh, I'm just not going to recycle anymore because A, B, C. Well, you're countering with X, Y, Z, and it is a lot more well researched and well versed, because you know what you're talking about. A lot of these assumptions are made incorrectly, so you can do that education piece right there on the spot. Does anybody else have any other questions? I saw a couple people had to jump off, but we still have several on. Robert, did you have anything that you wanted covered for your business, or your company?
No, I think this has been very helpful. Again, I would say I come from we're for a sustainability consulting firm, so waste is not our strong suit. We're more carbon accounting, but waste comes up from time to time, and so that's why I definitely want to join here more. And so it's very intriguing.
We'll be doing these lives every 2 weeks, Robert. So, and for all of you, on Wednesdays at 1 o'clock Central here. So if you do want to join in the future, I'll be, promoting other events down the road, but definitely bring your questions. And I got to tell you, when we're talking about climate, we're talking about carbon, we have to fold in the issue of food waste, which we really haven't talked about just yet. And food waste heading to landfills are one of the top 5 climate gas emitters globally. And whenever you've got food in the waste stream and it goes to landfill, it's not in a encapsulated area. It's very open pit, and it just, all that degradation, the biodegradation that occurs, it releases methane gas, and methane is about 21 to 72 times more potent than carbon dioxide. And so keeping that sequestered out of the atmosphere, out of our environment, is really critical. And food waste is about 40% of the entire waste stream in the US. And a lot of that is still consumable food. A lot of that is food that could have been donated to needy, hungry people in our local communities through the Federal Good Samaritan Act of 1996. So, the food donations from businesses allow the legal coverage. So a lot of businesses still think that if they donate food, they're going to be sued if somebody gets sick. And the Good Samaritan Act protects all businesses federally from any legal action whenever those donations were made upon good faith with proper time and temperature standards of the state's health department. And so, and not only that, you can get a tax write-off as well. I mean, that's a win-win. If you've got a manifest of what you donated, how much, when, and to whom, and it has to go to a nonprofit that is, is set up for food redistribution, because they too have to keep things to proper time and temperature standards as well. But they can work with local food banks. It could be a nonprofit that has stepped in for a local food bank because maybe they have more coverage and they have more, maybe they're a little bit more nimble in the transportation piece of it, and they can help out the local food bank. But yeah, the food donations is the highest and best use of those food materials, and you can get a tax write-off to, I think, the tune of 15% fair market value of what you donated. So if you donated 100 loaves of bread and each one cost your business $1, you put that on your manifest, your spreadsheet, whatever, who it was donated to, and then you can attach that to your taxes, and you can show there's a 15% fair market value of that. So it's not just paying for it to be dumped, into the landfill dumpster, but you're actually going to save the food, feed hungry people in your community, and get money back for it. So for me, that's a win-win. For any business, that should be seen as a win-win. But keeping food out of landfill is really one of the top ways that we can reduce climate gas emissions, and from any business, especially, or any business that has a food permit. Let me rephrase that. Does that make sense, Robert?
Oh yeah, 100%. I was when we put inventory, waste is one of the worst areas for data quality, I'd say. I mean, you just people don't even know. That's one we make estimations on all the time, like you kind of talked about. How big your dumpster? How many times does it get picked up? They don't know what it weighs. They don't know how much waste they're generating. So we make broad assumptions for the majority of our clients. Mm-hmm. We always flag this, hey, you need to at a minimum know how much you're generating, and then from there you can start saying, well, if I'm generating 100 tons, what is in that 100 tons? Is it scrap metal? Is it food waste? You got to go figure that stuff out. But where it sits today, now there's an interesting conversation. We work with a lot of manufacturers. It's just not the top of their list of things they're looking at. But like you said, it's crucially important, and kind of shifting that narrative to say end of life is just as important, or potential re-life is just as important as kind of your upstream emissions as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Again, the education piece, and people who have put contracts in place before your employment, and you just it's status quo. People are like, well, this is just how we've always done it. And there are many other new innovative ways that you can assess and alter the contracts, the service, the number of dumpsters, the capacity, all of that you're talking about, for sure. There's also smart sensor technology. We've got affiliate agreement set up with several smart technology companies that measure on an automatic basis the fullness of a dumpster, and can really, they're so advanced now, they can determine the contamination as well. They can take pictures, or there's like a laser that goes in and will scan the materials, and it can identify, and then everything through AI comes into a dashboard, and you can see, hey, before the hauler comes, there's 18 cardboard boxes that were put into this dumpster that A, should have been recycled, and B, were never broken down. And so the AI and the dashboard can tell you, hey, go take care of this contamination before the hauler comes and before you get charged for any fees. So, for not handling your materials properly. So some companies will absolutely charge you for contamination rates. And these new sensor technology companies will help keep your haulers honest. and they'll help you determine your contamination rates, and determine if the fees that are being charged are actually warranted. You have additional information that you compare to what your hauler is stating or what your hauler put on your monthly bill. And you can determine if there's a discrepancy there. And you can call them up and say, hey, can you explain this? Because our data says something different.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you have any other questions? Anybody else?
Not from my end.
Okay. Well, I do want to wrap this up with an offer that we are offering our Cash for Trash Zero Waste Business Academy. And this is an online 8-week course where you go through the general, kind of training modules of the basics. And this is our Tier 1 program, the basics of zero waste. Help to get new managers on board, help to understand the basics of zero waste, the operational and business efficiency concepts, as well as how to train your staff in a fun manner that will actually get buy-in and make sure that your programs succeed. And also we talk about food waste and several other different types of topics that are kind of basic, that give everybody the headaches that you usually get whenever you first start one of these programs. And then our Tier 2 program is, once you get to that process, Tier 2 is a deep dive, right? We get straight down to the nitty-gritty of how do you renegotiate your hauler contracts? What does right sizing even mean or look like? How do I do it for my property? We really get down to the cost savings piece, and some more advanced training techniques as well for getting that buy-in, as well as green marketing strategies. Also, there's a lot of times where businesses don't exactly know how to scream it from the rooftops that these green initiatives are being undertaken at a business, and they don't exactly know how to pull together their press releases, or how to post on social media, what the lingo is, what customers need to hear in order to align a little better with your messaging and with your green messaging. So there's some deeper dives that we take with saving money and then putting it out through green marketing messaging strategies. And then our third tier is kind of a white glove service. It's a done for you, where you fly our team out. We're on site. We do the waste audit. We do the analytics, data analysis and reporting. We do the staff training with fun games and competitions. We'll assess your whole building, look at your purchasing practices. We'll look at your hauler contracts for you, help find those money leaks and help plug them as well. So we kind of do a top to bottom assessment of your property. And that's a lot of times you can pilot one place and then roll it out to other locations for your business if you've got multiple locations. We're also certified true zero waste advisors. So TRUE is the zero waste system for facility certification. It's kind of like LEED for energy and water, but this assesses waste. So if you're looking to get your facility certified through the TRUE Zero Waste program, we're also qualified to do the assessments and help you get that certification as well. So I want to put that out there. If folks want to get in touch with us, again, you can find us on LinkedIn. Here is my LinkedIn address. You can also connect with us on several of the other social media. We're on Facebook and Twitter or X, whatever you call it now, as well as several others. You can look at our website, zerowaste.org. That's the digit 0, not the word 0. And you can also connect with us on our page, our business page on LinkedIn, Zero Waste Strategies. So I want to thank everybody for joining. I do appreciate all the back and forth and hearing your questions and just getting a real sense of what's going on at your site, so that we can help you get a little bit of clarity on some strategies to implement right away, maybe some longer term strategies that will save even more money down the line. But either way, it's really good to get feedback from you guys regarding what's going on site, what your real headaches are, and how those are changing over the course of time. So again, we'll be doing these lives every 2 weeks on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Central. That way you can register, you can go ahead and bring your questions to the table so that we can have the back and forth conversation that is so necessary to help sustainability managers, entrepreneurs, business owners and managers really get the footing on these newer concepts around zero waste and waste reduction, and make sure that for your company, those waste reduction priorities become a lot higher and a lot higher in the budget line items as well. The more that you invest in your waste reduction, the more and faster you're going to see cost savings. So I'm going to leave that with you. Again, Stacey Savage, founder and CEO of Zero Waste Strategies. Let me know if you have any additional questions. You can send them over to me through LinkedIn DM. Thanks again. Take care. We'll see you in